Chapter 11. 11 The right skills to buy. I let out a laugh as I relished on the feeling of taking down such a humongous beast. I was even happier from learning how to better use your skills as your proficiency rose. Flames of Torment shot out a line of flames in front of me when I first casted it, but as I gradually kept on using it, new ways to manipulate it came to light. From being able to move the line of flames in the direction I wanted to twisting the thick flames like a rope to now connecting their ends and adding a spin to it, making them even deadlier. This made me look forward to learning and improving higher ranking skills as time passed. I continued thinking while observing the headless giant before I gathered the things that dropped. Aside from the cores, there was also a rank D skillbook. Ice shards drops sharp shards of ice at a specific location. This skillbook was in fairly high demand and could be sold for a decent amount of money. It didn't fit with the current me and I wouldn't be learning it, as my goal now is to focus on obtaining an offensive rank C skill. Along with that, I wanted to buy other skills like Arcanist's Sphere of Protection, Arctic Armor, and Danger Sense that could be activated and, on my case, become passive skills that only end after I command it. This was my next phase of plans, skills that I could turn on and keep on without them requiring any more thought from me. If I can collect a multitude of support and defensive skills that provide a variety of effects and layer them on top of each other, just the thought of it kept my blood pumping. The next skill will be a killer rank C skill that will be of use when I dive into Soliel's castle in a few days. And the other skills I had in mind will follow after. Flames of Torment had a very high proficiency currently, with its power most likely nearing rank C skills. But a genuine rank C offensive skill is nothing to laugh at with their large scale of damage. I sat down beside the fallen giant and began absorbing the vitality and strength cores it dropped. I had collected tons from the smaller goblins across the 29 floors and planned to bring my vitality and strength attributes higher than 100 as soon as I finished. I reached out towards the green crystal that rose when the Goblin King was defeated and was transported outside. My camouflage was already activated, and not a single one of the many hunters clustered in groups or selling items and skills around the encampment of the monolith noticed me. The areas around safe dungeons usually turned into small markets of their own, with hunters trading skills, cores, or items without going through official channels like awakened centers. The selling of these things around the dungeons gave much less profit though, so unless a hunter was willing to pay a high price for a specific skill or item they wanted, most people sell their loot to the awakened centers. The government controlling these centers gobbled up everything they could, paying top prices for materials to strengthen their soldiers. The funny thing about it though was how many of these soldiers would be stationed in high-end cities where the rich were clustered together. That's just how this world was. I ignored the hustle and bustle of the environment and neared one of the square doors of the monolith, being transported back into Goblin King's abode for another run. I was planning to dive into dungeons like a mad ant for the days to come and accumulate as much as I could before being fully prepared for any situations when diving into Soliel's castle and dealing with that arrogant prick. Sir, we lost him a few hours ago after he got off a car downtown. Butler, what? How do you lose someone when we have eyes all over the city? Cohen asked the burly man that was dressed in a tuxedo over the phone. It was our mistake, sir. We'll be sure to find him as soon as possible. If I may, I would like to share my thoughts about this subject though. The butler hung his head low as he talked to his master. This was the man that had saved his life when monsters were about to snuff it out, and he had been indebted to him from then on. He was an official holding a high position in a major firm. But he left everything behind and followed his master willingly over the past months, managing his financials and turning a blind eye to the many tastes his master had. After all, nobody was perfect. What is it? There are many inconsistencies about him that we are unsure of and have not yet grasped exactly how high his level of power is. My apprehension increased today as he was able to escape under the watch of many of our people. Might I suggest that we approach him in a different manner? He carefully spoke out every word, making sure his words would not be the cause of anger. There was silence on the other end of the phone before Cohen spoke. Do you doubt me? The butler quickly frowned and hung his head even lower before he replied, I would never. I am only speaking from an abundance of caution of this man who has suddenly awakened to a power nearing rank B in just a few days. A pause followed thereafter, before a reply came with the call being ended a moment later. I'll keep that in mind. The butler wiped off the perspiration and looked out of the mansion. He did not succeed. His master had still become angry. My second run of Goblin King's abode was fruitful, as the boss had been kind enough to drop the sought-after Armor King's Valor. The 6-meter goblin had horrible burns all over its body as I took my time with it to get more practice facing something that much bigger than me. This was all in preparation to go against much bigger bosses that fully earned the title of Titans from rank C and above. One of the things I learned was that if you didn't have a strong enough defensive skill, it didn't matter how knowledgeable you were about its moves, as a single punch would be able to stain your body all over the wall. I equipped King's Valor and felt a new layer of clothes wrap around me. The armor had a light blue metal sheen to it with a slight protrusion at the chest, covering a majority of my body besides my extremities and head. The greatest thing about this armor was the fact it did not feel awkward to move around in, as if the metallic attribute was malleable. I could move and stretch my body even better than normal with no issues. The third run of the dungeon gave me more than enough cores that my backpack was almost overflowing now, along with the rank D skill triple shot that was commonly used by ranged berserkers that used bows. I had taken more than half of the day diving into this dungeon, and it was already night outside. Tightening my overflowing bag on my back, I left Goblin King's abode encampment and went towards the downtown with my camouflage active as usual. Once I was in the middle of the city, I turned the skill off and called for a ride that dropped me off the Central Awakened Center 20 minutes after. It was rush hour around this time, with many people running about downtown, many drowning their troubles and fear with alcohol, and many more going towards the unsavory places deep in the city. I went inside the Awakened Center and had to be taken to a private room because of the volume of things I was trying to sell. A fat-looking middle-aged man replaced the gorgeous woman that was talking to me and quickly handled the transaction, taking all my remaining cores and skills from Goblin King's abode and offering to deposit 1.6 million into my account. I looked at these numbers as if they were imaginary, and they might as well be, as they would be gone a few minutes from now. When I purchased the rank C skills, I became a high-profile client in the man's eyes, as he asked me if there was anything else I needed before completing the transaction, and I told him the names of the skills I wanted. A few minutes later, 3 rank C skill books were situated at the table next to us, and only 100k was deposited in my bank account. Next chapter should be done in the evening. Adui. Chapter 12. The new rank C skills I had bought were Explosive Rune. Upon physical contact with your enemy, brand them with a chaotic rune that will explode on your command. Aura of Haste, an aura that increases movement speed, attack speed, and cast speed envelopes you. And Life Essence, gain increased vitality 30 and regeneration at a great cost. These skills correctly fit with the direction I was going towards. Multiple skills that can remain active for me at all times, along with my first defensive rank C skill. Explosive Rune was a boss killer that mages wanted in their arsenal because of its significant damage. The only problem is that it drained the entirety of a rank CS energy, and they had to come in contact with the boss to initiate it. The mage hunters had to make sure that they had full energy before the boss fight and that there was a competent enough knight distracting the boss. Otherwise, the moment they get near themselves, they'll get squashed. Once the rune was placed on the boss, half of the fight was done, as it dealt such a significant amount of damage that it could even outright kill a rank D boss if the rune was placed in a critical location, or maim a rank C boss. The problem was, no mage ever dared get near a rank C boss unless they were wishing for death. With my overlapping defensive skills and the ever so increasing active skills, I should have no problem using Explosive Rune to its full potential. After the sale was finished, the joyful man's face jiggled as he said, "Here is my card. Give me a call or text whenever you're coming down, and I'll be sure to receive you to the best of my abilities." I nodded to the man that had a full smile on his face and left the Awakened Center. As soon as I was out, I blended into the rushing people and activated camouflage once more. The nearest hunter lodging was not too far away from the Awakened Center, and I got there in under 10 minutes. I quickly received the keys to one of their luxurious rooms and found myself in a room similar to the one I stayed in before. I placed my bag down on the bed and eagerly began looking at my new skills. Explosive Rune would have to wait to be tested later, but as soon as I activated Aura of Haste and Life Essence, a red and green color began appearing on my body. The colors would come and fade a moment later, being fairly transparent and only visible if you were to really focus. I felt my body become visibly lighter and saw a 30 appear on my vitality attribute. Haha. As long as I found skills like these and layered them on my body, would I have anything to worry about? I shook myself out of my reverie and ordered room service, this time getting 2 plates of a very huge lobster. I went over my day and thought about what I would be doing tomorrow while enjoying the supple texture of the crustaceans. This was a habit I was planning on developing regularly, to think back to what I did today along with any mistakes I made and how to improve in the future. I went to sleep soon after as I was dead tired. Anderson was holding a drink as he overlooked the city. Atop his mansion, the thing on his mind was the newly awakened hunter he couldn't seem to keep a track of. He knew all of the hunters that were C rank or near it in the city. And he made sure to introduce himself whenever new ones appeared. They were quickly reined in and called upon whenever his team lost a member while diving in Soliel's castle. None of them could deny his words, so why was it that this new one pissed him off so much? Anderson thought back to that pathetic apartment and realized it was his eyes that seemed unyielding, that seemed to say he wasn't afraid. How could he not be afraid? Whatever inherent skill he awakened, does he really think he could look at me with an expression like that? I held the paramount skill Giant Strength, which allowed me to stand toe-to-toe against a C-rank Titan. Who are you compared to? A boss I killed every week. The one person he usually listened to in the city had also told him to be cautious because of the many unknowns, but it only furthered his distaste towards the hunter. No matter. I will see exactly what gave someone like you the confidence to look at me with such a gaze. Cohen Anderson. Occupation, Hunter. Vitality, 188 Focus, 163 Strength, 195 Skills. F. Lightning Strike, 41 F. Shield, 33 E. Strengthening, 41 D. Minor Regeneration, 43 D. Quick Speed, 42 D. Harden, 38 D. Blade Edge, 45 D. Danger Sense, 31 C. Aura Blade, 49 C. Regeneration, 23 C. Heal, 33 C. Life Essence, 25 C. Blast, 19 C. Blade of Lightning, 55 B. Giant Strength. Inherent Wrathful Equipments. C. Igneous Sword, C. Igneous Armor, Searing of Storage, C. Fiery Boots. Early morning the next day, I was already up and heading towards Goblin King's abode. Tomorrow would be the day when I would head down to Soliel's castle with some of the highest rankers in the city, so I had to use my time as efficiently as possible today. The first task was to rush through the dungeon in under an hour and a half, as I was aiming to dive in at least 5 times. With this in mind, I bought a specialized hunter bag that was woven with materials meant to stretch. The bag had straps that tightly hugged your body so that a strong hunter could move without any issues. This was a poor hunter's item, as the truly rich ones had purchased equipment that allowed them to store whatever they wanted in a large space. I put this item off for now as it would have taken a majority of my funds, and my goal was obtaining more skills. Currently, I repeated the same process as yesterday and arrived at the monolith at 7 am. It was a fairly cloudy morning and still early, so there were significantly fewer hunters around. Some had already set up shop with their skill books and cores, others meeting up and forming parties while getting to know one another, still activating camouflage. I entered the dungeon and appeared on the clearing filled with trees once more. This time though, besides the skills I originally had, I had added Aura of Haste and Life Essence. I ran towards the first group of goblins that I could see and rushed up to them while I was still hidden. They were alerted the moment I came near them, but that didn't stop me from reaching my hand out and placing it on each of them while they were still disorganized. With my increased speed from Aura of Haste, I could do this much without an issue. I then pulled back a few feet away and watched as black tattooish circles spread to cover 1/3 of their bodies. I observed them as they turned my way, none the wise about the runes that had sprouted on their bodies. I gave the command and the rank C skill Explosive rune was fully utilized. Bang! The portion of the goblin's body that was covered in the runes exploded with a huge force, throwing chunks of flesh and bones everywhere as 5 goblins were soon lying in their own pool of blood. The damage was just as expected for a rank C skill. Powerful. I speedily cleared the floors like this, with all the defensive and support skills kept active. I pressed down the floors with camouflage hiding me and giving me enough time to come in contact with the monsters that exploded a second after. Some floors I still used Flames and Torment and kept on experimenting with it as its proficiency continued to rise. More than an hour quickly passed and I was through all 29 floors and headed to the boss once more. The 6-meter-tall Goblin King looked as ruthless as always and noticed me as soon as I came down. Even though I was hidden, I walked towards it slowly until I stood a meter away, where it stared me down. This one was one of the peculiar traits of this boss that interested me. When the fight began, it was always so calm, as if it was measuring me up. During the fight though, it would go completely berserk. It was still a monster though, and threw a fist down at me a second later. I raised my small hand to match this fist as my palm was open to receive it. PAH. A sound like that of the loudest slap resounded as Arcanist's sphere of protection absorbed all the damage and the ground beneath me cracked. The arm of the Goblin King rapidly had a runic tattoo spreading on it, and the boss quickly felt something wrong as it grabbed its skin and tried to rip it off. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out as its entire arm blew apart and it let out a thundering howl. The enraged king reacted fast, throwing another fist with its remaining arm, only for the same thing to repeat. I was standing at the same location, The ground around me full of cracks as if an earthquake occurred. I had sunk a few inches into the ground as I calmly looked up at the Goblin King that was missing both of its arms. RAA. It let out an angry shout as if it would not give up and kicked its right leg downwards. PAH. Boom. The same scene repeated, and now its right leg was gone. The large beast could not support its weight as it fell backwards with a loud thunk. Loud breathing could be heard as its entire face was twisted in pain. I climbed out of the small hole I had been repeatedly kicked in and jumped up on top of the body of the beast. Landing on its square abdominal muscles and traveling forward to its face, I looked down at it as it could not move or do much of anything else. Besides the heavy breathing and a pained look, I could see another expression on the Goblin King's face after more than half of its body was blown away. It was extremely distinct while I looked at its huge eyes. I had seen this expression before. I had felt it before. It was fear. I reached my hand out and let my palm touch its forehead, leaving it there as I commanded explosive rune to combust. Boom. Another deafening explosion rang out in the clearing before silence ensued. Arcanist's sphere of protection and Arctic armor didn't allow even a single stone or meat to land on my body, negating the force of the explosion as if it was nothing. Chapter 13. 13 preparations done. The feeling of dominating such a huge being from the beginning to the end was exhilarating, to say the least, and a testament of just how far and fast I can grow. The first run of Goblin King's abode gave out an abundant amount of cores and an item called Goblin's Sword. I did not need the sword, so this would be one of the items that I would be selling later. I continued on and dived into the dungeon. Once more the second run gave me even more cores, along with the skill book called Flame Bolt. The third, fourth and fifth run collectively gave me one item and two more skill books. Debow of the Veteran, D-Swipe, and D-Restrain, all of them were rank D materials that I would not be needing and would also be getting sold. Throughout the dungeon runs, I made sure to use Flames of Torment along with my main skill of explosive runes that beautifully took down the monsters. This process took me an entire day, and I was able to bring a few of my skills to the proficiency of 100. The skills that reached a milestone of 100 jumped up explosively in Power Fireball, which was a rank F skill, now had power greater than a skill 1 rank above it. The balls of fire summoned now had a high propelling force that made them rush out even faster. Arctic armor even more comfortably hugged my body when it reached 100. An extra layer of ice appearing that further increased my defense, and also making me look like some knight you would find roaming the coldest Arctic wastelands. This marked the end of my dive for the day, as I had been diving for the past 10 hours and it was already in the evening. I left the dungeon, camouflaged as usual, and went downtown, where I once again called for a ride and went all the way down to the Awaken Center. In the Awaken Center, I had given a text to the fat salesman beforehand, and he was able to meet me and bring me to the private room the minute that I arrived. I entered the room and emptied my huge bag that held many cores, skill books, and items. After counting everything, the total came out to 2.8 million. I once again gave a list of the things that I was looking for, and they were quickly brought to me, reducing the money I would have taken all the way down to 500k. I would have loved to spend the rest of it, but I couldn't find any more applicable defensive or support skills that fit the criteria I set for myself in the Awaken Center. I would soon have to branch out to find more fitting skills. I had bought 3 more skills and 1 item, all of them being rank C. The first was a movement type skill that I had been looking forward to called Whirlwind. The second was another support type skill that was called Increased Penetration. The third skill was a life-preserving skill called Regeneration. The item that I bought last was a simple ring of storage, which many high-ranking hunters found themselves buying. It took away the hassle of carrying around the skill books and items and cores that were collected. Over the course of the day, as soon as I finished my business, I gave my thanks to the salesman and left the Awakened Center, blending in and using camouflage as soon as I was out and headed towards the Hunter Lounge. The process was quick as usual, and I grabbed the room fairly quickly. I was finally able to relax and absorb the cores that I kept behind. The plan was to reach the maximum that I could while using rank D cores. I then learned the skills and placed the storage ring on my hands, using my energy to feel the wide space inside of it. It was a large enough space for 2 people to be squeezed, and the Increased Penetration skill allowed me to deal more damage and further ignore the defenses from my enemies when I had it active. It was a much-used skill by mages and berserkers to deal finishing blows on bosses, and the regeneration skill was as simple as that. If I ever somehow took a large amount of damage, then I could easily cast the regeneration skill to begin healing without losing too much of my health. The movement type skill that was called Whirlwind would allow me to dash forward and close the distance to my enemies at a very fast speed. This would be good for surprise attacks or evading very dangerous shots. Regeneration and Whirlwind could not be activated and tested at this time. But I quickly activated Increased Penetration along with the rest of the defensive and support type skills that were in my arsenal to keep their proficiency rising. I ordered room service as usual, and this time around I grabbed 3 platters of shrimp. My appetite seemed to gradually be getting larger and larger as time passed. I enjoyed the food when it came and took some time to think once or more over what happened today. I went over my run in the dungeon, the skills are used, and how to better use them or further improve. I felt like I had fully prepared for what was to happen tomorrow. With all of these skills that most hunters would be able to activate momentarily for a life-saving moment, I had them activated at all times, even knowing how huge the gap was in strength between rank D and C dungeons. Seeing how easily I had been taking down the 6-meter goblin of Goblin King's abode gave me confidence for the officially titled Titan of Soliel's castle. Early morning the next day, I woke up, grabbed a shower, and had some breakfast at the diner area of the hotel. It was already 8 a.m. when I left the lodge to head towards Soliel's castle. This dungeon was renowned as the hardest dungeon in our city. It was a dungeon that many people died in until a specialized team was born to clear it. The dungeon always bordered in the high-risk zone. There was no encampment around the dungeon as usual, with many people setting up their shops and stalls quite a distance away. In the case of any dungeon break happening, people wanted the chance to at least be able to run away from the onslaught of beasts. The huge monolith was colored in a dark shade of orange, pulsating at a few seconds. The only road leading to it was blocked by military trucks and cars, making sure the civilians never neared this area. I didn't bother even showing my license and just passed through the guard point using my camouflage skill. I soon arrived at the bottom of the monolith and I looked up at the huge structure. I closed my eyes and sat down near it, making sure I was still hidden while activating all my defensive and supportive skills, watching the proficiency rising in real time. I felt extremely confident in anything that I would face today, as the previous day I had also absorbed many of the cores that I didn't sell, with my vitality and strength attributes capping at 150 along with the many skills that supported me. I highly doubt a given AB rank hunter could endanger me. Not too long after a few people began appearing, I stayed hidden as I observed them. The first 2 were huge dudes in their 30s. They both held huge shields that seemed to cover their entire bodies. On their other hands were maces with spikes that shone red. Besides the armor they had on them, they didn't seem anything special. But these were genuine C-ranked hunters. The next to arrive were women that both held staffs on their hands with magician's robes wrapping around them. They had a look of apprehension as they looked at the huge monolith. The 4 of them seemed familiar with each other as they began discussing some things soon after. The next one to arrive was a girl who seemed fairly young. In her 20s at most. This one had a blue sword on her waist, with her body covered with what I would only assume to be King's Valor that Ti also wore. Surprisingly, this girl did not go towards and talk to me first but she actually held a confident look on her face as she looked towards the huge monolith, making me surprised, as any rank C hunter could find themselves dead in this dungeon. So many held apprehensions. Anderson arrived soon after. His arrival stopped the discussions among everyone as they stared towards him. His eyes glazed over the 5 people and then soon turned into piercing eyes that came to my location. I calmly deactivated the defensive and support skills and then turned off camouflage. Surprise gasps came out of the rank C hunters as none of them were able to notice me. I wanted to test it just to be sure if Anderson would be able to pierce through the C rank skills effect even if its proficiency was increased. Maybe I had to wait until it neared 100 for it to have a complete effect on rank B hunters. While Anderson's piercing gaze did not leave my sight, he walked over and said, "You really have such an excessive amount of energy that you would waste it on hiding this early this morning?" His tone sounded very calm, but his words dripped with disdain. I replied back, "Nothing to worry about. I was only testing the strength of the people I would be leaving my life to today." I seemed to have a knack of making him angry. His face became sour and he turned away from me and addressed everyone. "I want the dungeon dive today to be a very clean one. We have 2 new hunters joining us. This one goes by Rachel and this one is Noah. One is a berserker and the other is a mage." He pointed to me and the girl that held a confident look on her face as he continued, "For you too, this will be your first run, so follow all directions and do not lag behind. This dungeon is different from the ones that you are commonly used to." These words were directed to Rachel and I. "There is only a single floor in this dungeon and it takes us almost half the day just to clear it. Do not be surprised by what you see, protect yourself and cover each other's backs, and we should all come out of this alive. When the boss appears, leave it to me and follow everything I say. He articulated the next words very slowly. In the case any problems occur and you see it coming towards you, do not stand idle, run, or you will die. I listened to his somewhat inspiring speech as we all prepared to dive into the dungeon. I had done my research previously about Soliel's castle and his words were not false. The dungeon only had one singular floor. But this one floor took the lives of many hunters. As the speech was quickly wrapped up, he went towards the other 4 party members to discuss something, and I noticed uncomfortable look pop up on their faces. Geez. Did this guy actually have bad relationships with everyone? The girl that was apparently new just like me came towards me and said with a puzzled expression, "Why does it seem like there's friction between you and the strongest hunter in the city?" I smiled at her and replied, "I'm not sure either. I have no problem with the guy, but he seemed to not like me the moment so he saw me." She cocked her head in confusion as if she did not understand, and I said once more, "Don't worry about it, there should not be a problem." As soon as we finished talking, the rest of the group came towards us and we went towards one of the square doors of the huge monolith. Once all of us were near, Anderson reached his hand out first and the rest of us followed. Quickly being transferred to the first floor of Soliel's castle. Noah Osmond. Occupation, Hunter. Vitality, 150. Focus, Strength, 150. Skills, F. Fireball, 100. F. Heal, 43. E. Arctic Armor, 100. D. Flames of Torment, 97. D. Safeguard, 31. D. Danger Sense, 95. C. Arcanist's Sphere of Protection, 93. C. Camouflage, 67. C. Aura of Haste, 23. C. Explosive Rune, 33. C. Life Essence, 22. C. Increased Penetration, 13. C. Regeneration, 1. C. Whirlwind, 1. Equipment, E. Swift Boots. D. King's Valor. Searing of Storage. Hi everyone. Huge thanks to those that took their time to leave reviews, comments, and power stones. I'll have another chapter out in a few hours. Adui. Chapter 14. It was not correct to even call this a floor of a dungeon as it seemed like a world by itself. There was a huge expanse of trees all around us and on the horizon a humongous castle was apparent. This was Soliel's castle. The castle was built in a medieval style and had a grand look that imposed itself on all that looked towards it. This castle housed more than 100 C-ranked monsters and a humongous titan that we would soon be facing. Anderson began talking as we made our way towards the castle. When that door opens, we will be facing 10 C-rank monsters. They are made up of extremely tough stone-like materials that need a very damaging skill to break. We will have to break through multiple rooms that hold these statue-like monsters in order to reach the boss in the main hall of the castle. It'll be covering Dina and Stacy. He pointed to the 2 women that were covered in robes, and the 2 of you, he said, pointing to the 2 hunters holding the huge shields, will cover Rachel and Noah. I do not want any mistakes. Be confident in your skills and attack to kill. The rest of the group nodded in understanding and we were soon near the castle, which opened its doors to show a large room where 10 statues were standing still. The moment that we entered, the statues that were 3 meters tall and had a golden shine opened their blank eyes and came towards us. The 10 C-ranked monsters spread out all over the room and rushed in with a semicircular formation. Anderson dashed in first with the 2 mages following not far behind him, heading towards the right, already casting their spells. The 2 tanks nodded at me and Rachel and went towards the other side, quickly colliding with the huge statues. Everyone here was fairly knowledgeable, so skills quickly went off and flew towards the statues in sparkling shades of colors. I cast Flames of Torment and formed it into a circular disc that I threw at one of the statues, instantly smashing the head. Rachel, the berserker that was standing by my side, instantly disappeared and drew the sword she had on her waist, which was now showing a dark red color that instantly went to split apart another statue on Anderson's side. I don't know exactly how he did it, but 3 of the statues were already broken and lying on the ground as shattered stones. The mages behind him had both cast a spell that quickly formed a dark thundercloud that spewed down light, which struck down on the heads of the remaining 2 statues and took them down as well. On our side, we had 3 statues still alive as the tanks were holding them off, knocking them back with their shields as they neared. Rachel stood at a distance and then slashed her sword horizontally. The sword let out a blinding light that struck and destroyed 2 statues, quickly giving more breathing room for the 2 tanks. I controlled Flames of Torment and quickly smashed the head of the remaining statue. It was just the beginning, but the teamwork seemed to be fairly solid. This was only the first room that we had to pass in this castle before we even came close to the huge titan that would be facing. After the room was cleared, everyone besides Anderson sat down and closed their eyes. Most likely recovering their energy, I followed their lead and acted as if I had also spent a significant amount of energy to cast flames of torment repeatedly during this time. I activated skills that did not show on my body, as I was pretty sure a significant amount of time in this dungeon would be the recovery time between the castle rooms. I activated Aura of Haste along with Life Essence, which shone 2 colors on my body that soon faded. I also cast Regeneration even though I had no injuries, just to test its effects. A feeling like I had just received the best massage flowed over me as the tension in my body was quickly released. This was probably the last possible use anyone thought this high-ranked skill that required a high cost of energy would be used for. I was surprised at its effect, as I had never been injured and didn't plan to be any time in the future. Safety first. After about 10 minutes, most of the group had gotten up and we were ready to move on to the next room. This one held an extra statue, bringing the numbers up to 11. The same strategy repeated. I observed Anderson using a skill this time around, as he swung his sword and an arc of lightning flew out, smashing onto and destroying 3 statues right away. His rank was not for show. The mages by his side cast the same skill that blasted down lightning, quickly taking other statues down as well. The teamwork was becoming even smoother for our group as the 2 tanks in front of us stopped any statues from getting near us, while Rachel moved in and out with her sword, occasionally throwing a curved blade of light that smashed onto the statues. I kept the flames of torment versatile, as it shifted from a rapidly spinning disc of flames to a tight cable that wrapped around the statue's head until it exploded. The tanks occasionally had lights shining on them or transparent shields appearing whenever they were taking hits from the statues, always making sure to stand their ground and not be pushed back. After we cleared about 5 rooms and we were resting again, Rachel approached me and spoke. Your handling of skills seems to be very precise, but I've never heard of you since I came to Outer Bank X. Did you also recently move into the city? I gave a smile as I replied, no, I have been here all this time. I just awakened recently. This was information that anyone could easily dig up on me if they put the time in, so I wasn't worried about sharing it. She seemed surprised and asked, really? Then you must have awakened a fairly powerful inherent skill. I gave a smile and I didn't reply. A few hours slowly passed like this. We were clearing many of the rooms in the castle to move forward, with the numbers of the statues increasing by a 1 after each room. In our 10th room, we're facing 19 statues, which made things much harder. A few of the statues broke away from the defense of the 2 tanks with a huge shield and ran towards me. I acted quickly to cast Flames of Torment and swung the line of flames as if it was a huge baseball bat to push them away. Rachel dashed back a few seconds later to finish them off. There were a few injuries, but no casualties on Anderson's side. He protected the mages fairly well while moving in and out and pushing back any statues who were trying to break through the rooms. After this, kept a constant number of 20 of these stone statues, taking a significant amount of time to clear while trying to prevent injuries as much as possible for the coming boss fight. After we cleared the 19th room, serious expressions arose on Anderson and his original party members' faces. The path out of this room led to a large hallway that had a golden door at the end of it. We would now be facing the boss of Soliel's castle. This boss was somewhat special though, as he would not be alone. He had 10 of these statues standing guards around him. This was the point in time where many people failed if there wasn't a powerful enough person to hold the boss back. As other members quickly took down the guards and then joined in to help the top hunter quickly finish off the boss, Anderson called everyone together and gave me a piercing look as usual. I had been getting that look every time he observed the fights throughout the past few hours. I've been hiding literally almost all of my skills, only using Flames of Torment to destroy the statues that came our way. So I shouldn't have given anything away. He seemed to become less angry at me as time went and just adopted the disdainful expression more and more. I didn't bother with it, as it was always good to be underestimated and not be on guard against. He began speaking when we came close. I will be holding the boss back and make sure that it doesn't break free. The rest of you need to take down its 10 guards as soon as possible and then reinforce me. He turned to the 2 tanks and continued, you guys need to do your best to protect the mages and Rachel. Make sure that nobody gets heavily injured, as we all need to be in our prime to take down the boss. The tanks nodded their heads while the rest of us prepared for the fight. I was looking forward to meeting this titan of a boss that had taken down many hunters. As soon as everyone had their energy recovered, we went towards the huge door and stepped into the boss room. Chapter 15. Soliel's Castle 2. Anderson observed the people behind him before he opened the door towards the boss room. Almost all of them had faces that showed their dependence on him because they knew their lives were in his hands the moment that they entered this room. But as usual, there was one person, one face that seemed to be overly calm with nothing to worry about. Anderson let out a vicious smile before opening the door and heading inside the boss room. He would show them all today what strength really is, what power really is. In the face of strength, everything else has to bow down. The inside of the gigantic room held a huge statue that was reaching almost 10 meters tall. They seemed like ants compared to something this huge. But Anderson had a confident expression on his face. He had done this multiple times in the span of a few months. Not a single time had he died. A few others had died, of course, but that was out of their negligence. You had to be strong in order to avoid death. Surrounding a huge titan were its 10 guards who seemed just as imposing but only 4 meters tall, and they were still double the size of the hunters that were about to face them. Anderson pulled out his sword as he began walking towards the huge statue that did not in any way take him into account. Halfway there his body shone with an imposing red glow. Giant's strength was activated. The only B-rank skill floating around Outer Bank X, and the skill that allowed him to go toe-to-toe with this huge titan. He grabbed his sword and he swung it towards the titan. A red crescent blade that was 2 meters tall struck out and hit the chest of the statue, instantly calling to attention its 10 guards and disrupting the peace in the hall. Anderson ignored the 10 guards as he rushed forward to continue attacking the giant statue. The 2 tanks that were equipped with extremely large shields, along with the 2 mages Dina and Stacy and Rachel, had all begun to cast their spells. The tanks reinforced themselves as the guard statues came and attacked them. The 2 mages had already cast their spells as huge clouds that began releasing lightning as if it was endless. Rachel's sword was pulsating in a red light as multiple red blades were released from it, going forward to attack then coming statues. As for Noah, he had cast the same skill that allowed him to move a huge cable of flames forward. The cable of flames quickly formed into a disc and shifted back and forth as it moved from one statue to another, either taking their legs or their hands or completely smashing their heads. Cohen was observing all of this as he continued to fight with the boss. He had observed all of his team members over the past weeks, and he had been observing the new team members today. The new girl was fairly strong but nothing to worry about. The only one he couldn't peg was Noah. He couldn't exactly see all the way through him. He wanted to believe that he was as weak as he showed himself to be, but something very simple was giving him away. The fact that this entire time while going down this dungeon, going to each room and taking down huge statues of monsters, not a single time was he flustered or worried. He showed no fear, no apprehension. To Cohen, this meant that this person is hiding more power, but he was not showing it. He wanted to see the extent of this guy's power. The 10 guards had lost their jobs as they were quickly taken down and transformed into rubble. The rest of the team soon came to reinforce Cohen in his fight against the 10-meter monster. As soon as the tanks came in, Cohen moved back to get a breather. The 2 tanks worked together to deflect the punches that were barreling down as the mages cast their specialty spell, and more dark clouds formed overhead with lightning striking down, chipping at the huge body of the titan. Blade edges were coming out of Rachel's sword as she continued to release the red crescent blinding lights. Noah's skill was more straightforward, where his rapidly spinning disc of flames had been borrowing itself onto the knees of the huge beast, trying to quickly cut off its legs and make it lose mobility. He would not succeed though, as the titan was quickly enraged by the continuing damage that it was taking, and the fact that none of the ants that were dealing it damage were taken care of. Oh! A loud roar resounded from the titan as Cohen yelled, "Take cover!" The mages ran behind the tanks, who lifted their shields up while the titan was roaring. Cohen went towards Rachel and Noah and stood in front of them as the whole place seemed to shake as huge boulders then began falling from the ceiling. This was the titan's skill, a type of skill that only began appearing on rank C bosses and above. At the moment it was dealt a certain amount of damage, the skill was activated and boulders would begin raining from the sky. If you were slow in responding for even a second, you would find yourself squashed on the ground. The stones began falling down and heavily hitting the ground. The 2 tanks had their shields lifted up, slanted at an angle. Whenever the stones hit, the skills on their body shined and they grunted. But they survived. The 2 mages beneath them were still safe and sound. As for Anderson, he was even more straightforward, keeping his eyes on the ceiling and using his blade to strike down any incoming stones. If he missed any of the boulders fallen from the ceiling, Rachel would quickly move in and release another one of her plate lights, striking the huge stones and veering them away from their location. Noah, as a mage, should be taking cover with his weaker defenses, and could only have his skill ready to be fired in the case any stone were to come his way. As the huge stones fell down, with everyone focusing on keeping their lives, Anderson turned towards Noah as there was something we wanted to confirm. He wanted to know the extent of this guy's power and what exactly he was hiding. The Titan's skill was about to finish, and 3 more boulders that were heading their way. Anderson put on a fierce expression as his sword struck out towards the incoming stones. Rachel took care of the 2nd stone, and Noah cast his spinning line of flames towards the 3rd stone that was nearing his side at this instant. Though an accident occurred, the stone that Cohen was taking care of did not break and veered off track. He made a sound as if he had slipped, and his blade just quickly grazed over the boulder that was coming down. The boulder that was now coincidentally heading towards the mage beside him. Noah returned his face up in the direction of the boulder with a surprised face as it quickly struck him bait. The sound caused the party members' faces to turn ashen. The 2 tanks and 2 mages off by the side quickly turning around to look at Cohen with an unbelievable expression. Rachel had an expression of disbelief on her face as well as she stared at Anderson and looked over the rubble where Noah was supposed to be. A brief second passed before a movement was heard and a person came out of the rubble. The sight they feared to see did not actually happen, as the hands there were reaching out to push the rubble of the stones aside were clear. His face was clear. There wasn't a single speck of damage on the man's body. The 4 party members quickly let out a relieved sigh and returned their sight towards the boss, as they couldn't spare a single other second with their eyes off the huge monster. Cohen spared Noah a glance before he quickly turned around and dashed towards the boss. The disbelieving expression did not leave Rachel's face as she was very close and saw exactly what happened. There had been no accident, and that was all intentional. So, she was shocked and didn't understand just what sort of irreconcilable problem had occurred between these 2 hunters that would cause something like this. Noah was coming out of the rubble with a surprisingly calm expression and dusted himself off as he looked at Anderson that was rushing towards the boss. How was he taking this so naturally? Did he not almost die? Rachel had a complex expression on her face as she shook her head and focused on the fight at hand. The 2 tanks were quickly blown away and Anderson filled in their spots to hold the boss at bay. The thunderclouds from the mages were above them again. Constant streaks of lightning striking down on the body of the Titan. Rachel held her blade behind her as a blinding light was becoming more and more apparent on her sword. This continued on for 10 seconds before she released the blade of light. That was not more than 2 meters long towards the leg of the boss. Noah was not far behind, quickly throwing his signature disc of flames towards the same location he was attacking before. With this teamwork, it didn't take long for one of the legs of the huge statue to start cracking before it could not support its entire weight. Its left leg had shattered from the constant damage that was being dealt. Its upper body had huge dents and scratches from the lightning that was falling down and the blade attacks that Anderson kept sending its way. The huge Titan quickly fell on its knees, its hands smacking on the ground and sending a shockwave that disoriented the party members. The 2 mages were quickly knocked back from the blast as the tanks were not there in time to prevent the blast from reaching them. Rachel and Anderson seemed fairly okay, and surprisingly, so was Noah. The Titan guided its right hand that had fallen down, formed a huge fist, and swiped towards the puny ants around it. This attack would take out all the party members if it was not stopped. Cohen had his face in a twisted expression as he began to feed more anger to bubble inside of him. This was good. This was what he wanted. The angrier he was, the stronger he became. That was the inherent skill that he awakened. Wrathful, it fed on his anger. The angrier he got, the more energy he had, the more power he had, and the more destructive he became. He wanted to show these people just what true strength was. He reactivated his highest skill that took most of his energy as his anger kept on rising. Giant strength was activated once more. A dark, baleful energy was permeating from his body as he grabbed his sword and rushed towards the incoming fist. Boom! A resounding sound was heard as the fist was stopped on its tracks, causing the Titan to scream once more. Anderson kept the momentum going, using his increased anger as a source of fuel, and propelled himself towards the face of the 10-meter monster that was now crouching down. The red energy released from his body mixed with the lightning that began appearing on his blade. Blade of Lightning was activated, its color quickly becoming tinged red and forcefully smacking on the head of the kneeling Titan. Boom! After the sound that almost ruptured the hunter's eardrums disappeared, half the head of the boss went with it. The Titan breathed its last as its huge body crumbled to the ground, the force holding it together thoroughly gone. Cohen Anderson stood atop the rubble, releasing a pulsating red light. He looked down at the hunters staring at him as his blade released the last sparks of lightning. This was strength. This was the power that allowed him to do whatever he wanted. This was what he wanted these hunters to have ingrained in their minds. Dun dun dun. A fight is coming. I'll have the next chapter out in a few hours. Chapter 16. Anderson was standing majestically atop the rubble as his skills effects finished. A green crystal was rising up as the boss had been killed, and he walked down to observe the expressions that he had wanted to see so badly. The expressions of fear and reverence from the people below him. He saw these usual expressions on his old party members and turned his gaze towards the two new ones. As soon as he looked over, though, a piercing voice rang throughout the destroyed hall. What the hell were you doing? Why did you play around and almost kill your teammate? Rachel, the berserker that was shooting blade lights all this time, had a questioning look on her face as she directly asked this question. Anderson seemed to be surprised, as if he did not expect this type of reaction at all. He looked over at Rachel in a skeptical tone and asked her, "Oh? What's giving you the balls to talk to me like that? Were you watching the same scene as everyone else?" Rachel defiantly replied with, "Why the hell does that matter? I'm asking you, the leader of this party, why you would purposefully act negligent and try to harm your party member when you were in the position to protect them. How can they feel comfortable to hunt with you again? You've lost all trust, starting with me." An incredulous expression arose on Anderson's face as something seemed to have clicked in his mind. He gave a loud laugh as he spoke. "My goodness, I am so sorry. I seem to have not gotten my point through. If it wasn't extremely clear from my actions and from my words, I don't give a damn." Anderson finished with these words in a condescending tone. Rachel didn't stand down as she continued, "So what? Because you have a higher rank skill and are more powerful than us, that means you can choose to do whatever you want? You would endanger your party members just to get your point across? For what?" Anderson was startled once again and said, "For what? For what? How'd answer you for the message to not be coming across? Party members? Trust? Haha." He looked towards the 4 hunters that had been clearing the dungeon with him these past weeks. "Do you see them? They have families here, they have friends here, this is their city, and they have nowhere else to go. Do you think anyone cares about this city? Do you think the bigwigs care what happens to a trashy city around the perimeter of the Empire?" His words were becoming louder and more piercing as he kept on talking. While walking towards Rachel, he continued with a cold tone, "It's me. I am the only one keeping the city afloat. I am the only one that gives a damn and stays here. I prevent the dungeon break of this dungeon that you can never clear without me. It is my strength, and because of this, I can do what I want. I can call them," he pointed at his party members once more, "I can call them fools right now, and they will be back with me right in the same place in a few days, giving their lives to clear this dungeon. You may have only been in the city for a week, but you should learn now than later about how things really work. You should know how to talk to people that stand above you." As he finished these words, he had reached Rachel, who still staring at him with a defiant expression. His anger was near his peak, allowing his skill inherent wrathful to provide him with even more strength. He moved at a quick speed, and a loud smack was heard, with Rachel smashing on the floor. A second after, a large hand mark laid across her face. She touched her cheek in a dazed expression, as if this was the last thing she ever expected to happen. She looked at the 4 that were recuperating the side, and all of them turned their heads away. Anderson walked up to her, clasping her clear neck in his hands, and asked, "Do you realize it now? When I say I can do whatever I want, you cannot do anything to stop it," he said as he lifted her up by her neck. "They cannot do anything to stop it." He continued while pointing at his old party members, "And he certainly cannot do anything to stop it." His hand moved once more as he pointed towards Noah. The person in question being pointed at had a surprised expression as he let out a soft sigh and said, "Let the girl go, dude. What the hell is wrong with you?" He had been watching the scene in front of him play out, being ever so surprised as the events unfolded. He didn't care when Anderson supposedly had his accidental slip-up that he easily brushed off by activating Arcanist's sphere of protection. He didn't care when he was talked on upon. What he didn't like were the arrogant words coming from him, and worst of all, the beating he had given someone who stood up to him. He was happy at the thought that the first party hunt he was in just finished successfully, and he could use his experiences here to dive into this dungeon in the future, but this guy just had to go and ruin it. So he repeated himself again and said, "Let the girl go." Another loud laughter was heard in the clearing as Anderson pushed the girl aside and looked towards Noah. He looked him up and down and said, "This entire time I've been trying to figure out exactly where the level of your power stands. I was not thinking correctly, just keeping tabs on you and feeling you out little by little. I should have done what I'm about to do now a long time ago. Do you have an inkling of what I'm about to do right now?" Noah looked at the man that was gradually getting red color on his body back again and calmly replied, "No, I don't know. What exactly are you about to do?" Anderson had a cold smirk as he said, I am about to teach you the rankings of the city. I am about to let you know that I am on top and you are on the bottom. I'm going to teach you what strength really is, because apparently, watching me take down a 10-meter-tall giant was not intimidating enough. As Noah listened to the enraged madman's speech, he turned his head towards his team members. There were 2 fully grown men that were the knights on the party and the 2 women that were the mages. He looked over to them and asked, Are you guys going to do or say anything about this? The 4 of them gave him a blank stare before they shook their heads in a depressing manner and turned their faces away. Noah shook his head as he saw this, and he looked back towards Anderson, who was speaking with a fully furious expression. Haha. I have been talking too much. Words were never my forte. I always let my strength do the talking. After my strength was registered, everybody fell in line. Now, be prepared, because you are about to fall in line. A hazy red smoke was coming off Anderson's body as he finished, tightened his muscles, and sprung forth. I looked at the man that was flying towards me and sighed at the complete breakdown of everything. I then casted Arcanist's Sphere of Protection, Aura of Haste, Life Essence, Increased Penetration, Arctic Armor, and Whirlwind. My body shone iridescent colors as multiple defense and support skills were activated. I looked at Anderson and I was surprisingly calm facing him. I didn't feel angry at him or hate him in any sort of way. I just pitied him. Maybe this was what happened after facing the pressures of this new world and not coping well. I did not want to become someone like him in the future. My gaze seemed to have made the charging bull even more furious though, as his power seemed to increase further, but none of it would be of any use against the current me. With a sad sigh, gales of wind surrounded my body as Whirlwind was fully activated and I made my move. Chapter 17. Fight. A thunderous impact resounded soon after as gales of wind rushed about in the clearing. Anderson was surprised at the speed that Noah rushed to him, observing that he had already cast multiple skills on his body. His exterior surrounded by a transparent bubble and body covered in an icy armor. He couldn't help but ask, just how much energy do you have in your body to be casting this many skills as if it's nothing? As Anderson was talking, the impact pushed both of them back. The red energy kept on enveloping Anderson's body as his rank C skill blast was used. His fist carried the momentum with it as he flew towards Noah. The fist met the first layer of protection, quickly causing a shock wave that pushed each of them away once more. Anderson kept his eyes on Noah as he saw the man was not ever remotely hurt. He smiled as he dashed in again and began talking. Do you know why I adopted my principles on strength? I used to be poor. I had nothing, no job, no family, no friends. I used to look up at those that were rich above me with their extravagant amount of money and the clothes and food they bought. His words carried traces of anger as his body continued clashing with Noah's defensive skills. The thing that puzzled him the most was how Noah chose to use his hands or palm to hit back when the transparent shield he cast on himself protected him fully, and did not even cast the signature pillar of flames he had seen him using throughout the day. He brought his focus back on the fight at hand and stopped overthinking things. I looked up to these people, those rich assholes. I wanted to be like them. I kept on saying to myself, if I just had that money, if I just had that power, oh, the things I could do. Anderson continued smacking into the defensive skill and saw that his attacks with his bare hands weren't working, so he increased the pressure and pulled out his sword. He wanted to see just how long this guy could keep all of these skills active before running out of energy. Lightning began to crackle around his sword as he dashed towards Noah and continued talking. Do you know what happened next? Something incredible occurred and I actually did get the power. The whole world went to shit and it was me who received the power. Me. The longer he talked, the more his anger and power seemed to increase. His sword was already pulled down, swiping towards the pest in front of him. An arc of red lightning was released towards the man that kept on standing calmly in the face of all these attacks, saying, once the red lightning struck, a figure flew backwards at a high speed and kicked up some dust, and yet he soon stood up without a single hair damaged on his body. Anderson watched as his smile grew wider. It was the right choice to knock this guy down a notch now. If I had actually given him time to grow, he might have threatened me in the future. Playing around with his thoughts, he moved forward again as he continued talking. So, I received the power, and do you know the funny thing? Those people I looked up to, those rich assholes that I aspired to be, many of them were dead within a few days and many more were now looking up at me. Seeing that his strike hadn't worked, he held his blade once more as lightning began to build upon it and continued. I used the new power that I had gained to kill monsters and get stronger. My power allowed me to become the richest man in the city. The best hunter in the city. It gave me strength that you could not imagine. Anderson was moving at high speeds as he spoke. His sword that was covered in lightning kept on striking at the bubble of protection that surrounded Noah. It is the strength that's going to destroy that thin bubble that you have around you. I'm going to keep on striking and watch as you gradually lose that annoying expression on your face and you start begging for your life underneath my feet. Noah wasn't standing still, moving in and out as his defensive skills completely deflected the strikes of the blade and the lightning that came out of it. He wanted to test the extent of Arcanist's sphere of protection as its proficiency was literally a point shy of 100 and it seemed to completely protect him from C-rank skills. Its power also deflecting most of the damage from rank B skills. If any damage actually managed to pass through, the Arctic armor would absorb it. If anything else passed that, he would just quickly use regeneration. Anderson's voice rang out as he charged forward once more. You cannot imagine the things you can do when you have the strength. Those rich bigwigs that survived, the ones that spent the remaining amount of their money to buy skills, items, and cores to get stronger themselves? They work under me now, they do me favors, and they send their own fucking daughters to my bedroom just to get on my good side. That is power, that is strength. Noah seemed to be getting ticked off as he was listening to this madman's ramblings, so he began replying and cut short his experimentation time. That is not what strength is, dude. I was just like you a few days ago. I didn't have any of this. When I did become slightly stronger though, all I felt was a sense of liberation. His words seemed to carry power with him as a huge pillar of flames appeared beside him, making Anderson even more surprised as he was expecting him to run out of energy any time with his extremely bad efficiency in using it. The pillars of flames acted like a rope, wrapping itself around the entirety of Anderson's body and squeezed down. Anderson let out a pained expression as he began roaring. R.A. Rank B skill, giant strength was activated. The red aura coming out of him condensed even more as his power rose by another level. The sword clad in lightning struck out once more, but it did nothing. His body bulged out as let out a howl and the pillar of flames surrounding him was dispersed and he once more seriously attacked the man in front of him. His attacks continued as Noah deflected or absorbed them and continued talking. Strength does not mean you can look down on others. Strength does not mean you can do whatever you want. You can even look at it as a responsibility. It's the reason I came along to this high-risk dungeon that can explode any day. The calmness seemed to fade from Noah's face as he finished his words and condensed dark balls of fire around him. More than 20 quickly surrounded him, spinning furiously as they rushed towards Anderson's body and exploded on contact. Anderson could be heard laughing in the midst of the explosion. Haha, responsibility? Sophistry. Utter bullshit. An expression of someone that had given up appeared on Noah's face as he shook his head calmly and looked at the imposing Anderson and gave a command. Boom. A screeching scream resounded as Anderson was inadvertently blasted back. He had a shocked face as he looked at the left hand on his body. It was missing. It was gone. Anderson looked back in a pained expression towards Noah as he exclaimed, "What the hell did you do?" He seemed dumbfounded by the sudden attack that he didn't see coming from anywhere. They were standing apart at the time, and yet an unseen attack came that took his entire arm clean off. A calm voice rang out of the clearing, "Stand down." Noah was staring at him with a cold expression. He did not want things to go down this road. He did not want it to get this bad, but this guy would not stop, so he repeated himself once more, "Stand down." The man that was clad in a red haze in front of him stood up with an even more furious expression as he roared out and held his sword and his remaining good arm, rushing forward once more. Boom. Another explosion rang out the moment Anderson began rushing out, being thrown back once more and his face adopting an even more pained expression. His chest armor had exploded out and blood was gushing from his chest. He breathed heavily as he looked towards Noah. He didn't understand how he was taking damage when the guy wasn't even near him. What was going on? What kind of skill was he using? Noah sternly stared at the man before he repeated himself once again, "Stand down." Chapter 18. Resolution. Noah looked at the man in front of him as he continued speaking. "You could have stopped all of this a while ago, you know." He looked towards the man that was missing a hand and had a bloody chest the entire time they were fighting. He had plastered a ton of explosive runes on the man's body. The tattoos spread all over him without notice, and he had detonated 2 of them just now. A burst of hysterical laughter came out from Anderson. "Stop? Stop? Haha. Do you really think I could stop? Power was all I had, and now someone like you, someone that has awakened barely a few days, can already stand above me? Bullshit." Anderson's wounded body stood up and moved once more. His words that were dripping in anger had somehow given him even more power. The dark red haze that was constantly created from his inherent skill Wrathful wrapped around him and became even more condensed. Giant strength was also activated once more as the man stood and raised his one good remaining hand. Arcs of red lightning began to pulsate from his sword. Noah turned his face from this and looked towards the 5 party members that had been watching this entire fight. He saw a rueful and expectant expression on the faces of Anderson's original party members. Rachel was staring at both of them in a distasteful manner while wiping the dust and rubble from her body. He then turned back towards the rushing Anderson and watched him come forward as if he was looking at a flickering flame in the wind. Strength isn't having the power to look down on others. As soon as Noah's words finished, another loud explosion rang out as Anderson's body was inexplicably blown away. A crazed laugh could be heard as the explosion cleared. Haha, I am being lectured by a child. I am being lectured by someone who doesn't understand how the world works. Do you know what I've done with my power? The monsters I destroyed? The pathetic people I've killed? The women I've taken? Do you know? The right leg on Anderson was the next limb to be missing as he lay tattered on the ground. He turned his head to observe his leg. And then at his left arm that was also missing. He then stared at the man that kept looking at him with the same calm expression on his face. He felt like he was being looked down upon. He had to bring his eyes up to meet the gaze of this man, and he laughed even more. Haha, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna kill the strongest hunter in the city? Are you going to damn the lives of hundreds of thousands of people? Noah was slowly walking towards the destroyed man as he began talking. The strongest hunter in the city. Huh, do you really believe that you still hold that title? His words were slow but rang out as if they were a clap of lightning in Anderson's ears. Noah gave the man in front of him a look of pity as his hands wrapped around Anderson's neck. He looked at the man that was about to perish from this changed world forever and shook his head in disappointment. Boom. A thundering explosion rang out on the clearing once more, and the infamous rank B hunter of Outer Bank X was lying down without a head. Noah let out a deep sigh as he looked at the body of the so-called strongest hunter in front of him and felt relief. He didn't want to be like this man one day, shouting his ideals on someone stronger only to die soon after he deactivated the many defensive and support skills on his body. As he shifted his face onto the items that Anderson wore, they were C rank equipment, and even though they were currently damaged because of explosive rune, they had a self-repairing property and they would be as good as normal in a few days. Near Anderson there laid a thick blue book. This was why hunters were regularly hunted down by other hunters if they were jealous enough and had the balls to do it. Killing any hunter had a definite chance of dropping the highest ranked skill that they were using. And scrupulous lower ranked hunters sometimes worked in groups that target those one rank higher than them, either ambushing them in their sleep through other unsavory means. And this was also why the hunter lodgings were very popular, because they guaranteed a level of safety for the hunters staying there. There were hunter guards around the clock documenting everyone that came in, where they were going, and what their purpose was. The skill book made my heartbeat increase as I thought of the huge windfall that all of these unfortunate events brought. This skill took the pedestal as the top prize today. This was the rank B skill, Giant Strength. Imbue your body with immense strength that blows away anything daring to stand against you. 50 strength. Information about the skill's effects quickly appeared in front of me as my mood turned sour. There wasn't any information about this skill as Anderson was the only one who held it, but I didn't expect it to simply add 50 strength once activated. Of course, 50 strength was something huge as that amounted to an advancement of an entire rank, but it did not match the many focus-based skills I had been collecting so far. Skills that are geared towards close combat fighters would just reduce my attention from the powerful mage skills that I should be spamming. My mood went down as I held the skill before another thought flashed through my mind, and I had to ask myself if I was the dumbest person on the face of this planet. Yes, Anderson was a close combat fighter and this skill complemented him perfectly, but even though I was a mage, it did not mean it wouldn't be tremendously helpful to me too. I was limiting my thoughts to what I commonly knew about mages, berserkers, and knights. A skill like this would normally be great for a knight or a berserker, but I would literally lose nothing if I learned and activated the skill, and would instead gain an entire rank's worth of strength attributes, and all times at that. Even though I wouldn't be using the extra power that the added strength provided, the extra speed that came with it would be more than worth it. Damn, just when I was feeling myself and thinking I was all that, to think I was about to disregard a rank B skill just because it did not conventionally match my class. Alright. Learn and try to be better. This train of thought opened up my mind to many paths and skills I had not thought about before. There were many skills specifically for knights and berserkers that I didn't even look at, as the only thing in my head was to just spam mage skills to blow away everything. But if I searched for and learned those skills meant for close combat fighters that will reinforce my defense, health, speed, and power. It was like a light was shining down on me, opening up a very obvious path that my dumbass hadn't thought about before. The cost of skills didn't matter to me, so why did it matter if they were not geared for my class, as long as they provided constant benefits on other aspects? I did not waste any more time and I learned the skill. Watching the book fade away in particles of light, I activated the skill as soon as it was learned so it could start earning proficiency. My body soon felt like I had an extra layer of strength added on, increasing my striking power and speed as well as giving me an imposing aura. I mentally patted myself on the back while I placed the items that Anderson was wearing in my storage ring, and carried his ring of storage with me, leaving a mangled body on the ground as I walked towards his team members. The two tanks and mages had relieved expressions on their faces while Rachel looked at him in a peculiar way. Death wasn't something rare for hunters. They had seen plenty of their team members die, and most were glad when they didn't perish themselves. He went forward and asked the girl that got a beating a few minutes ago, "Are you okay?" Rachel clicked her lips in an annoyed expression that also seemed somewhat afraid and looked back at the four party members behind her without answering my question. She looked at them and chided in a disappointed tone as she said, "You four are by far the most spineless cowards and such a poor excuse of hunters that I had ever seen in my life." The four hunters listened to this and shook their heads as if they would not engage. Did Anderson break them this much? They looked towards me and gave a nod before one of the tanks carefully came towards me and introduced him as Dan. He couldn't look me in the eyes as he gave me his card and mentioned that he and the rest of the party members would be back here in 3 days to clear the dungeon, and that I should let him know what time I'll be free to lead them. I unconsciously nodded as I had prepared to accept this role when everything fell apart with Anderson, although I will only do this as a play for the next week. I didn't plan to be limited by tying myself to hunting in a party when my progress is explosive as I move alone and clear dungeons without anyone holding me back. My solo hunting of this dungeon would be much more fruitful. Rachel watched this exchange as we swapped contact information and watched the hunters go towards the green crystal to leave the dungeon. They instinctively looked towards the loot that was shining in a pile beside the Titan that was now dead but looked away just as fast. Not entertaining any thoughts, they didn't mention a single word about Anderson in the entire exchange or acknowledge what had happened. Just leaving with happier faces and expressions like a huge weight had just been lifted off their chest. Rachel came opposite me as I was thinking this and put on a brave expression as she said, "So what the heck was up with you? You were stronger than this guy all along and were playing around just to be the knight in shining armor after." I was taken back when she said this as my mind was only observing the situation and acting only when I needed to. I replied to her with a smile. "I became stronger than this guy just yesterday, if you can believe it, and didn't exactly know how much stronger, so I was testing the waters." She clicked her tongue as she stared me down and then turned away towards the green crystal. "Thank you for stepping in anyway, you're not too bad," she said as her figure flashed away. Leaving me as the last hunter remaining for this raid, I let out a relaxing sigh as I took in everything around me. Pushing the dead hunter in the room out of my mind, I went towards the shining pile of cores and what seemed like a skill book besides. Chapter 19. The dungeon didn't end exactly how I expected, but I was content with the way things worked. As all the hunters had left the boss room, I actually enjoyed the fact that there were fewer people around me. Maybe I was just a natural loner. I shook my head as I reached down towards the rank C cores lying down as boss. We had been splitting the cores into equal amounts as we killed the statues in the rooms until we arrived at the boss room, with Anderson taking most of the cores as he dealt with most of the statues. All of the cores that he grabbed, though, along with everything else he owned, was now situated in my ring of storage. I didn't feel particularly bad from taking everything from the dead man as my thoughts quickly moved forward to what'll be doing next. I reached my hand out to identify the skill book that this C-ranked Titan dropped. Much to my surprise, it was a skill called Smite, pass down your ruling in the form of 10 swords of light. This skill gave me quite a shock as it wasn't among the many rank C skills that I have researched. I actually hadn't heard of this one before, and the skill seemed to go very well with the guidelines I set for myself for the new skills I'll be learning. So I quickly learned the skill as I was impatient to see its effects, even if it would just be for show right now as there were no monsters to test it out, and for the first time I cast Smite. A marking quickly appeared on top of my head with a symbol that very closely matched that of a star. A golden light was then being released in the sky as 10 literal swords of light quickly took shape and pointed down imposingly. My eyes were shining as I watched them hover in the sky, just waiting for a command to strike. I was very excited to see exactly how amazing the effects of this skill work out to be, and I wanted to quickly rush into the dungeon again to test it out right away. But I knew I had to call it a day for now. It had been a long day, and I was finally not feeling pressed against time. I burned the sight of the dead Titan and the dead hunter in my brain, and then I reached towards the green crystal, vanishing from the hall. A man wearing a well-tailored suit was watching the news with his arms trembling. Something shocking was being announced as breaking news. About an hour ago in Outer Bank X, the highest-ranked hero, Cohen Anderson, had perished in the dungeon Soliel's castle in an effort to save the rest of his party members. He had given his life to take down the terrifying boss, making sure nobody else was injured. The man listened to the news and stood there dazed, as this was something out of his wildest nightmares, never something that he ever felt was possible. His benefactor, the person who saved him, was now dead, and as for the things they were saying, he had given up his life to save others? Haha. He knew his master, and knew even more his personality. The butler shook his head in sadness as the face of a man who had been in his mind these past few days popped up. He thought of this man and asked himself, could he have had anything to do with this? As he was lost in thought, the newscaster continued. As this highest-ranking hero passed, he passed on the torch to someone else just as powerful, someone who will continue to keep the citizens of the city safe. The message received from the Outer Bank X City's elite hunter squad is that their new leader goes by the name Noah Osmont. The sudden announcement brought back the butler's attention to the TV, his eyes turning into cold slits as his theories were verified. So it was you all along. Anger and sadness were bubbling in the butler's heart, but he quickly pushed it down until all that was left was sadness. He recalled warning his master about this man because of the many things he did not know, but he failed his job. He didn't get the point across well enough, and his master paid dearly for it. He wasn't making the same mistake. The butler walked towards the huge doors at the mansion that he had kept open, waiting for his master, but he knew that he was not coming back. And yet he still stood in the middle of the open doors, waiting for no one, waiting for nothing. Noah carried his tired body over to the nearest hunter lodging. As soon as he left Soliel's dungeon, he wasn't really tired physically. He just felt mentally drained. Many events had occurred today, and as calm as he was, there were still things that he did for the first time, besides the abnormally more numerous than average looks he was receiving as he walked through the luxurious hotel. Nothing else seemed out of place. He did his usual ritual of grabbing a room and ordering food. As he was eating, he turned on the TV and almost choked on his food when he saw what was being reported. It was a local channel breaking the news. For Outer Bank X, a glowing red title was saying that the highest-ranking hero in the city was now dead. The things Noah heard baffled him to say least. Cohen Anderson had sacrificed himself. He had boldly taken on the boss that was endangering his teammates' lives and used all of his power until his last breath before he passed on the torch to Noah Osmont. Oh, come on. Noah let out an exasperated sigh as he saw his name and picture paraded in front of the TV. He reined in the rest of his thoughts as he continued to watch the news before agreeing with the way that Anderson's party members finished things. It was much better to let the public know this version of the story than telling them that one of the hunters just killed the other. The officials had kept the information short and precise. One hunter was dead and another one, just as powerful if not more, took his place. There was nothing to worry about. No problems would occur. Everything is just as it was before. A smile formed on Noah's lips as he thought of this. No, everything was not how it used to be. Because that rank C dungeon that had given hunters so much trouble, he was about to turn it into his playground. He was planning on clearing it by himself multiple times for the next few days, as most of his reservations were reduced when he confirmed his own power against Anderson. Of course, he wouldn't suddenly make stupid decisions that could endanger his life, but he definitely had more legroom to take risks. Bigger risks gave bigger rewards. The risk he had to take these next few days is going to be watching the monolith of Soliel's dungeon turn from orange to blue as he cleared the dungeon multiple times, and what reactions that would receive from the powerful figures in the city. But even more so for the actual powerful figures hiding in larger cities. He wanted to take down the 10-meter giant titan all by himself. He wanted his strength to continue rising and his range of skills to continue expanding. He wouldn't limit himself as much anymore. Noah Osmont. Occupation: Hunter. Vitality 15030. Focus. Strength 15050. Skills: F. Fireball 100, F. Heal 53, E. Arctic Armor 100D. Flames of Torment 99D. Safeguard 38D. Danger Sense 99C. Arcanists. Sphere of Protection 99C. Camouflage 77C. Aura of Haste 54C. Explosive Rune 61C. Life Essence 51C. Increased Penetration 44C. Regeneration 11C. Whirlwind 13C. Smite 1B Giant Strength 8 Equipment, E Swift Boots D King's Valor Searing of Storage. Chapter 20. I was up fairly early the next morning as I was too excited to try out a multitude of things today. There were so many ideas flowing in mind that I didn't know what to start with. I looked at the dark-haired man in the mirror as my thoughts were inexplicably taken back a few years into the prime of my 20s. The man in the mirror definitely looked like me a few years back, a head full of messy hair, the same fair complexion, and eyes full of hopes and dreams that weren't completely destroyed. I shook myself out of the trance as I started the day. I began by checking the ring of storage that I had taken of Anderson's hands. In it were a multitude of cores, items, and 2 skill books. I was extremely content with the finding as a majority of the cores were rank C with 8 rank D items and 2 items that were rank C, Lightning Boots and Fiery Helm. The 2 skill books were also both rank C, being Resilience. Defense and healing effects are increased by 50 and supercharged Energy Rumbles. 3U increasing casting speed by 50. The supercharged skill would have definitely fit the criteria I had set a few days ago. But Resilience would also be a great addition that goes along with my current plan of even learning skills geared towards other jobs besides mage. The rank D items would all be getting sold, along with a few rank C pieces that I wouldn't be wearing as I waited for the items that I took off Anderson's body to self-repair. I damaged them pretty heavily with explosive rune, but they should be fully repaired by tomorrow. As for the cores, anything below rank C found in the ring would be sold, and I began absorbing the rank C vitality and strength cores. I had both the ones that went as my share plus Anderson's, so it was a sizable amount, but I was only able to bring strength to 167 and vitality to 170. With these preliminary things completed, I checked out of the room and shot a text to that lovable fat salesman I never bothered to remember the name of. As I went to the Central Awaken Center, my face had been shown around heavily throughout the night. So many people recognized me and snapped pictures, but I ignored everything and arrived at the Awaken Center in a few minutes. The fat salesman seemed to have been promoted, as he had 2 assistants with him. When he saw me walk in, he threw out that usual shrewd smile and brought me to a more luxurious room in the back compared to last time. I took everything in a stride as the moment my name was released last night, I knew something like this would be happening. The first thing the salesman did was open a suitcase and hand me a shining blue card that held my name and picture, along with a title of Rank B Hunter. I grabbed it and gave my thanks as it saved me the hassle of looking for the advancement area and wasting time there. I then took out all the cores and items that I wanted to sell while I asked him for a registry of all Knight and Berserker skills they had in stock. He was puzzled at this but did as he was asked, and I was browsing through all the skill books soon after. I had done a significant amount of research on mages and their skills as that was the path I wanted to walk on when I awakened, but I wasn't too well versed on the skills that Knights and Berserkers commonly used. Keeping my explosive progress in mind, I looked at rank C skills mostly, as well as some exceptional rank D skills that wouldn't be left far behind in their effects in a matter of weeks. A few fit my requirements, and I pointed them out to the salesman who brought them into the room in a few minutes. The new skills I had bought and learned were D Rough Skin. Resistance to elemental skills are increased. D Fleeting slightly increases movement speed. C Gracefulness. An aura that grants you increased evasion descends. C Precision, your accuracy is increased and your attacks rarely miss your target. And Adamant, your defense is increased as you passively heal from minor injuries. These were the only skills that fit my new guidelines that were in the Awaken Center. The remaining skills actively required you to be using some sort of close combat or ranged weapon to activate, like Blade Light, Shield Charge, or duplicate arrows. It made me think of whether I should also buy a weapon to add these skills to my arsenal too, without it spreading my focus over too many things. I was content with the new addition of skills and thanked the salesman that gave his usual bright smile. I had much fewer reservations about being seen or discovered, so I activated the new skills I just learned on top of all the old ones that were still active while I left the Awakened Center. I felt the increased strength of my body as my path was confirmed to be heading in the right direction. I was itching to dive into the dungeon right away as I hailed a ride towards Soliel's castle. A man with a sharp face was finishing some paperwork when his assistant walked through his office doors with an even bigger stack of papers and folders. A grimace formed on the man's face as his rough voice came out. "How is the production and recruiting of Rank B Hunters proceeding?" The assistant gave him a sweet smile as she replied, "Very well, boss. We have new ones come in every day, and we are able to produce at least 1 Rank B Hunter a day from the resources they bring back from the dungeon." The man nodded his head as he continued, "Good. The plan is going in the right direction, but it needs to be accelerated. Reach out for even more hunters across the cities and entice as many as you can. We want this dungeon to continue to be cleared every day with even more hunting squads. His assistant nodded her head as she put the folder in her hands on the table and then bowed with a smile. Here are the preliminary names we have gathered today that are waiting for your approval. For the Blessed Empire. For the Blessed Empire, the man replied with an impassive expression. He looked at the folder in front of him as he thought about the movements they had been seeing and how unprepared they were for what was coming. There was a huge threat looming over them, and people still moved about in complete ignorance. He was in charge of managing the Rank B dungeon in Star City and wanted to exceed the quota set by the admirals for its production. He wanted hunters to be entering it day and night, bringing out as many items, skills, and cores that they could. He planned to write an official letter to the higher-ups and some colleagues to suggest they increase the urgency of this matter and actively move the Empire's pieces for the days to come. The production of Rank B hunters was coming along nicely, but they would not be enough. They needed even more A-rank hunters moving about in the Empire. The face of Steel Mikhail passed through his mind as he considered all the new rising rank A hunters. He shook his head that was filled with worries as he looked at the figure of the assistant still waiting to be dismissed before him. He nodded at her and said while getting up and unbuttoning his shirt, "Close the door. I've been cooped up in here for too long and need to release some stress." The assistant smiled sweetly once more as she followed the command. At the bottom of the folder that she had laid down, a name was written among many. Noah Osmont was clearly apparent at the bottom of the many stacks of paper.